Historical context. The First World War started in 1914, and an Inspector Calls was set 2 years prior to this in 1912. Although Berling is made to look foolish by his dismissal of the prospect of war and his claim that the Titanic was unsinkable, he would have had many good reasons to formulate his beliefs. Great Britain was a wealthy country and still had an empire. The likes of Arthur Berling had every reason to be happy with life, but for the likes of Eva Smith, it was a different story. The welfare state that Priestley himself helped to set up was not in existence, and there was very little in the way of employment laws to protect the likes of Eva. Whilst trade union membership grew rapidly between 1910 and 1914, commonly known as the Great Unrest, there were many casualties like Eva Smith who were fired for inciting strikes. Also, whilst the Liberal government at the time were beginning to address social inequality, much of the reform was aimed at men. Women did not get the vote until 1928, and consequently, they had very little influence within society. The play's first audiences in Moscow in 1945, and at the New Theatre in London in 1946, would have survived 2 world wars and revolution and unrest, which would make many of the inspector's speeches more relevant. In the UK, the play was performed following the defeat of Winston Churchill's Conservative Party to the recently formed Labour Party under Clement Attlee in the general election. The Labour Party had enjoyed a landslide victory, presumably thanks to many men and women who had survived the wars and wanted to live in a more equal and fair society. From this point of view, an Inspector Calls would address many of the concerns that the audience would have. The new Labour government was committed to the social and economic reform that Priestley promotes and craves within his play.
Socialist educational supplement. Socialist educational supplement here, get it now. The term socialist is used to categorise the views of those who feel that land, capital and wealth should be evenly distributed amongst the wider community rather than amongst individuals. It's believed that the term came into popular use in this country following the Industrial Revolution, when there was a great shift from agriculture to modern industries. The development of industries such as coal, steel and textiles was widespread, and the men who had invested in these industries became very wealthy. The implementation of heavy machinery would often mean that people weren't in as much demand for work. Consequently, a vast divide in wealth began to develop. Naturally, the often impoverished landowners would not be happy with the turns in fortunes, and marriages between wealthy industrialists and the upper classes created new social positions. Berlin, despite being a fictitious character, is an example of this. In 1912, when the play was set, many of the working classes were feeling rather resentful of the huge difference in lifestyle and sought to strike for better paying conditions. Eva Smith's stand at the Berlin factory is representative of this. Priestley fought in the First World War and would no doubt have been extremely disappointed to return home to depression, strikes and hunger marches, and this is reflected in his writing. Priestley was actually one of the founding members of the Commonwealth Party in 1942. This organisation petitioned for the more equal division of land and capital and greater democracy. Whilst the party eventually joined forces with the Labour Party, it's understood that Priestley made some contribution to the development of the welfare state. Priestley made the decision to set the play in 1912 as this represented a time of great social unrest. Naturally, the ruling classes would be resistant to change, but by 1945, the 2 great wars had done away with many of the social pretences that antagonised the socialists. There were lessons to be learned from the recent fire and blood and anguish, and Priestley hoped that they would result in a more caring society. Now, if you'd like to buy one of these papers, Socialist Educational Supplement. Socialist Educational Supplement. Get yours here.